Hi everyone. This is not something that I really want to be talking about because fuck. But we got to talk about it. A little known figure. Um, I don't know if you've heard of them. Donald Trump decided to release a video recently, and it's pretty bad. I'm gonna be real with you. It's pretty bad. We're gonna watch it because I think it's important to watch it. And I said this before we started the segment, but if this is going to be, we're going to be talking about a lot of like heavy stuff. This video is obviously quite terrifying. It's hard to listen to. So if this is not going to be something that you can necessarily handle, that you want to listen to, maybe skip this, come back. It's good. Take care of your mental health. But let's go ahead and watch this real quick because we need to. So this is the video. Let me make sure. Oh, it's muted. Shit. I didn't realize I muted it. Okay, here we go.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their...
Quiet. Oh, okay. I'll turn it up. It's very loud for me, but I can handle this for you. We'll start over. It's fine.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly. I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable. We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers which are in no way licensed or approved for this use. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination.
Okay. So there was a lot there. It it is obviously a very hard thing to listen to. But there's layers to this. And I do want to kind of take it like one step at a time here. We're going to have to like listen to some of it again. Because I think there are like there are really important things that he says that kind of indicates like why we need to be concerned. So to start,
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed and abused. Very simple.
okay, so yeah, so first off, he does like equate this to child abuse. That's obviously not true. Literally, absolutely zero organization that there are zero like accredited organizations that are going to agree with that statement. Psychological, medical, like none of them will.
Here's my plan to stop the chemical,
Oh yeah, this is the
emotional
comment.
mutilation. Stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth.
Okay, so the language that he uses here is really, like it's intentional. Notice the way that he phrases it, the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation. One of the common things that the right has been focusing on recently has been essentially just lying and saying that there is a like huge amount of like super young children essentially just like getting like gender affirming surgeries. And the way that they act like they're just doing it, like you're just walking into a hospital and they're just handing out surgeries like it's fucking candy. But that's a really easy thing to disprove, which is why this language here is intentional and why it's like so fucked up. Because to say chemical, physical, and emotional, the implication here is that it is also an equal harm to validate a trans person's identity, and they are also equating like all gender affirming care like under the same banner. That's like the underlying thing. We're not just talking about surgeries here. The reason they use the language they're using is to have plausible deniability. When you call them on it, they can say, oh, we're just talking about surgeries. You don't want to give a 5-year-old bottom surgery, do you? And that is at least the reasonable take, right? Like that's the moderate take. Like obviously we don't want to give bottom surgery to 5-year-olds. The issue is that's not what they're talking about. And they get to use that as a shield when you call them on it because it's the easy target. Because they can then reframe the discussion around the surgery, even though what they've said is chemical, physical, and emotional. They're not just talking about surgeries. They are also talking about validating the existence of trans people's identity. Like your teacher talking about like gender and sex in like this way, that would be like considered the same thing. And obviously like he went into it. Therapists, doctors, like no, they literally are targeting the existence of like of trans people. Half the 5-year-olds in this country have had bottom surgery, circumcision, and every law they make about this makes explicit carve-outs to still allow circumcision. That's true. It's worth noting that in all of this discussion, we're not talking about circumcision either. Because funny, it seems like it might actually not be about protecting minors and might just be because you hate trans people. But let's keep going.
Policies on so-called gender-affirming care.
Okay, yeah, that's the other thing is he wants to reverse, quote-unquote, cruel policies from the Biden administration. The Biden administration's policies have just basically been to just protect the rights of trans people, to get gender-affirming care, and to strengthen like non-discrimination. That's what he's talking about. At least as far as I can tell, it's possible that there's like something that Biden has done recently that I just haven't seen, which would be based if so. Where was the other one?
Ridiculous. A process. Puberty blockers.
Okay, puberty blockers are safe. We've gone through this. We don't have to go through. Like there have been 1,000 videos on puberty blockers, on like the effectiveness, on all of that. Like, this is again another scare tactic because it is another way to deflect, to allow them to focus on one issue when they are saying 1,000 things that they want to get rid of. Because if they can focus on the easiest thing to defend, the idea of like children being taken advantage of, then you're not going to you're going to be more willing to be permissive of the other things that they're doing in the background that they're not being as open about, or that they're being as open about, but you may just not realize because you're not paying it as close attention. Protect minors, like they aren't trying to ban up to 21 or some more in some states. That's another thing. Like, if you look at some of the laws that are being passed being debated in states, like some of them want to ban like transition care like up to 26. Like for real, like I'm 26. Like, I started transitioning a year ago. Like, we're talking about literally, like, I have been to college, like I pay tax, like I am a fully functioning adult, and they're still trying to like ban transition like care for people my age. No spoilers, Dean Shadow.
Physical appearance.
I guess it's not really spoilers. We already watched the video. But yes, he does say at any age. But we'll get to that.
On minor children.
Again, source. Like, I'm not saying that like gender affirming surgeries on like minors don't ever happen. Like, there's probably cases where it happens, but you have to for one, if there are cases like where it happens, you can't just look at it happening and then like say, oh, this is bad. Like, you have to look at the context surrounding it. There are plenty of like reasons why people have surgeries. There are plenty of like reasons why things are done. You have to like look at the context there. You can't just ignore that. The other thing is that, like, again, source, like, please show me where this is like an issue. Show me where this is like an issue that's worth like looking at. Because as far as I'm concerned, if this is like such an issue, it should be pretty easy to it should be pretty easy to solve without just banning transition care for anyone. I know of one case where a 16-year-old got bottom surgery, and it was because the situation was so dire that if she did not get the surgery, she would have killed herself. It was an emergency situation. Yeah. I mean, again, like there's like context there. You have to look at the surrounding context in situations like that. Republicans would ask for a source. The source is they made it the fuck up.
Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age.
Okay, so this is I think the really important thing. So when Republicans are saying that they are not trying to like just make it illegal to be trans, when they are saying that they are not like trying to ban transition for anyone, that it's just about like minors getting surgeries, this is like the language that you need to like know that this is not true. Like, listen to what he just said.
And gender transition programs that promote the... I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age.
At any age. Like, we're not just talking about like surgeries for minors. We are talking about instructing ceasing federal programs that acknowledge like anything that's going to be gender affirming at any age. Like, not just children, adults too. That like you cannot let them get away with this in terms of calling them on this kind of shit. This is the kind of stuff that they hide behind all of this rhetoric with like the Save the Children bullshit that makes it easy to overlook. The whole thing is Amat and Bailey making broad claims, basically working to outlaw trans people when the fallback is, oh, but the children are getting surgery. Exactly. That is exactly what they are doing. by focusing on trans kids getting surgeries, it gives them a shield. It's really easy to defend children. They are the easiest group to garner sympathy for. And it's also really easy to manipulate and mislead people when trying to defend children. But the thing is they're not defending children here. They just want to outlaw being trans. And the easiest way to do that is to coat what they want to do in the language of defending children. Because when you call them on it, when you say, well, you're trying to like outlaw being trans. No, we're not. We're just trying to prevent children from having irreversible surgeries. And now you've like ceded ground because now we're talking about children having surgeries and not talking about all of the other stuff that they're doing. Like this.
I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation.
I want to focus on that too.
Or pay for these procedures, taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures.
Okay, so again, we're talking about removing all federal money going into any kind of programs that would essentially like pay for these for like procedures to happen. Now, they will say that like the implication here is obviously for minors, but that's not what he said. They've been very deliberate about their language the entire time, using minors when it is necessary to use that in order to prevent them from giving the game away. They are talking about making it illegal. Well, not illegal, but necessarily, but removing all like federal like funding from any kind of program that would like provide these surgeries or anything that would pay for these surgeries.
And pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly.
Again, what is this going to accomplish? Nothing, but it is going to be used to attack trans people on the whole. It is not just about children.
I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately. Further,
that is probably, I think, one of the more insidious parts of this, by the way. That part right there. Because that is removing like the institutional ability to even get like bottom surgery, top surgery, like anything like that. Like hospitals that want Medicaid and Medicare like funding would have no choice but to basically cease all gender affirming care. Like probably down to even like administering hormones. Like he's not even really specific, I think.
Standards for Medicaid and will no longer meet federal or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of
the chemical or physical mutilation. So it's not just about surgeries. It's also about hormones. Like he's literally talking about removing Medicare and Medicaid funding for giving HRT. Like that would, like hospitals would have no choice. Like that would essentially like they wouldn't have a choice. They would be strong-armed into doing that. I think that is the most insidious part here. And again, kind of shows that this isn't just about children. I feel like you'd be hypocritical by still allowing breast implants so that cis women could get them. Hypocritical, yes, but when have Republicans ever cared about being hypocrites? The thing is like we don't actually even know if that would even be true. Like unless they specified, I mean, like broad language like this could affect stuff like that. Could literally like affect like cis women getting breast implants too. We don't know. I mean, there are ways that like this could hurt a lot of people outside of the trans community as well. But but that's what I'm getting at. This is very broad and sweeping.
Minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards.
And again, he says minor youth. Does anyone believe that it will only be used to justify when it comes to children? Not sure how liberals can deny that it's an attempt at demographic cleansing at this point. Yeah, no, this is literally genocide rhetoric. This is actually genocide rhetoric. Like, no, that's exactly what it is.
Standards for Medicaid and Medicare. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children.
Okay. There are a lot of ways that like this is fucked up, but I am kind of like going back to like Texas and their like abortion thing. Remember when Texas like basically gave free reign for people to fucking like just sue healthcare providers for like doing abortions if they just like thought, or like sue like individuals for like helping people get abortions. Like that's what I'm going back to. That like I don't believe for 1 second that like Trump is smart enough to do this in a way that's not that. But even if not, like we're talking like I'm thinking of like custody cases, right? Like imagine that you have like parents and you've got like a trans kid involved, and the kid's like with a parent that's like gender affirming, and like the parents like cool with them getting like HRT and stuff, and like you know going through that, like, and then the other parent like fucking sues them. Like I'm thinking of shit like that. Like there are lots of ways that like this can cause like major damage.
The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich.
Okay, so for one, this is like a nothing thing, but also, what conclusion do you think they're going to come to? Like I'm sorry, like I don't believe for 1 second that would be like a fair investigation. Like I believe that like the organizations would probably like, you know, find nothing. But as we have seen time and time again, why did I say it like that? Time and time again, they can just like pull like evidence out of thin air. You just need like one edge case, and then they can just make it about that. Like it literally, again, investigating like pharmaceutical companies and doctors and like hospitals and all of that for just providing gender affirming care.
At the expense of vulnerable patients, whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers, which are in no way licensed or approved for this use.
Again, I don't believe that to end up being a fair thing. But again, remember, all of the language here, this is supposed to be about children, right? But like, where is that? Where is that here? We're not even talking about children again. At the end of the day, this is supposed to be that like this is genocide rhetoric. This is supposed to be targeting like all trans people.
Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination.
Civil rights violations for validating the existence of trans people. That is insane. Like, actually insane. And people don't think this is fashion. Yes. Like, legitimately, though. Like, I honestly don't know how you can, like, watch this like if you're a liberal, I don't know how you can watch this and not understand like this is genocide rhetoric. This is fascism. This is like the Republican Party, Donald Trump in this instance. We are about to become the main characters of 2024, like the trans community is. And that sucks for a lot of reasons. This is like that, like Trump has literally said that this is like day one campaign promises that he's alluding to in this. That's why it is very important. Like one of the most important things right now is that we have to get like strong democratic support. And I'm not just talking about being like tepidly in support, like, you know, sharing like pride flags on your social media, like as a politician. Like I'm talking about actual real support, like actual like promises to fight against this stuff. Like it is extremely important that in 2024 we have candidates that are fighting for us. They can't just ignore us and just tepidly support us like they have in the past. This is priority one for Republicans. Democrats have to be willing to fight for us or else we are at risk. And we have to continue pushing these issues in their face, making them talk about it. Otherwise, this is what happens. This is the logical conclusion to that. I will definitely be promoting those issues. Good. Call your representatives. Bully your politicians. Do what you can. There are a lot of like things that you can do. Obviously, like trying to get like pro-trans politicians elected is one way. Mutual aid. I think someone in chat earlier mentioned something about community self-defense. Again, I don't want to go too heavy into like the gun issue, but like if you're a trans person, and again, capable, able, it's a good idea. If it's a good idea, like arming yourself, taking safety defense courses, like these things are things that we need to be doing. Freelam's so sick of people who don't understand the actual depth of threat from this rhetoric. Fascism gets no pass. Yeah, true. It like, that's why it was so frustrating last year when there were like a bunch of like liberals on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, having like this discourse that like, oh no, there's no like trans genocide. No, this is genocide. That is what this is. Now, I want to be a little bit hopeful. Because this is a heavy topic. There was a thread on Twitter that I saw. I don't remember when. It was either today or yesterday. There was a thread on Twitter from Scott's at Sovereign Ravens. Based. If you're on Twitter, you should follow them. This is a thread that Scott's made. And I thought it was worth going over because it is a call to action, essentially. Now, Matt Walsh also released a video. And
Trump also.
That's what this is. Matt Walsh released a video saying that doctors who provide gender-affirming care should be executed. Matt Walsh has been going really hard on the advocating for death for like people who he can vaguely associate with the left, or for people for which his biases lean against. It's really sickening. But Matt Walsh released this video around the same time. So Scott's is talking about this. I'm just going to read through this because I think it's a good thread, and then we'll try to close out. Between this and Trump's recent video, I wanted to talk about how this anti-trans rhetoric is escalating, but I am not sure that that is useful, and others have done a good job. So instead, let's talk about what we can do. Let's start with what they're trying to accomplish: the normalization of anti-trans and eventually anti-all queer sentiment for it to be seen as a normal opinion to have. Trump and Walsh are very extreme, talking about murder and defunding, making the moderate position of simply banning transition a compromise. It is not moderate, and it is not a compromise. So what we, particularly cis people, can do is to just normalize trans people and point out how weird the conservative obsession with trans people is, as well as countering the common myths about trans people in healthcare to others we meet. But the normalization is not the only thing that is going on now. Republicans in the US and the conservatives in the UK are also using institutional power to legislate trans people away. How do we counter that? Stay informed about the bills that are happening at the state and federal level. Both Aaron and the Morin and S-Queer have been doing an excellent job covering these. S-Queer Alejandra Caraballo. You can follow both of these if you would like. Write to your representative, state, governor, federal, and if you are able to, show up to testify. The people pushing these policies are a minority, but they are vocal and a motivated minority. If we act, we can drown them out. If you live in safer areas or other countries, contact your representative still, get them to condemn the actions of bigots and put protections in place. I know many people scoff at electoralism as just a band-aid, but it is the weapon being used now, seeing it entirely as unwise. Additionally, try to find communities to be a part of, local or online, and provide money and mutual aid to the people in need. If you have other ways to help, other resources, please post them here. What lies ahead will be difficult, but it is not insurmountable if we act. To all trans people, I am sorry that the world has ignored you and let this escalate to this point. It is not fair, the hate you face or the fear that you feel. This is a good threat. There are a lot of good points here. Scott's is correct on pretty much everything here. And why I decided to show this and read through it is because I think it is important to show what you can do. Like what we can do to take action, because what we need right now is hope, right? It's easy to look at Matt Walsh's video, at Donald Trump's video, and to feel hopeless. But sinking into hopelessness is what will just allow the fascists to win. So let's kind of go through this a little bit. Scott's is incredibly correct, by the way, on like how they are, like the actions that they are taking. Like they are trying to normalize anti-trans sentiment to the point that the moderate position becomes vaguely anti-trans. It is not, by the way. Like there is no compromise in which trans people are just like, in which banning transition, like banning transition is not a compromise. We cannot cede that ground. And obviously, like Scott's is coming from the position of like a cis person and trying to convince cis people and liberals. But yes, this is all like good advice. Normalization of trans people, having it be normalized that trans people are in your spaces. It is people are like talk about electoralism, but like Scott says here, that is the weapon that is being used. That is the way we need to fight back, at least in some ways. There are ways that we can do outside of electoralism that are good. Finding communities to be a part of, helping people, like mutual aid, that kind of thing, community self-defense, get a gun, take self-defense training, be able to protect yourself, your family, your friends. If you know other trans people, like being able to protect each other is important. You know, having like resources that people can access. Another thing I would advocate, this is a little bit expensive, but you know, if shit hits the fan, having like your passport is a good idea. If you can access that, like that is a good idea. Again, that's, you know, worst case scenario kind of thing. As far as being hopeful, why I say that this is like a hopeful thread is because, again, having having like a plan, you know, having like a list of like, here is what we can do. Here are things that we can accomplish to ensure that it doesn't get to this point, I think is important. It provides a lot of like security. It is a good way to remain hopeful, because fight if we sink into hopelessness, nothing's going to work. Again, staying informed. I like heavily recommend following Aaron in the Morn. If you don't, Aaron Reed does a lot of really good work of tracking anti-trans bills, of like a lot of like information. You like legit follow this person. Like you keep yourself informed, especially if you're like cis, especially then. Yeah, like this is a good thread. What's the overall point here? The overall point is this is genocide rhetoric, and we cannot allow this to happen. We have to fight for this. There's going to be a lot of really stupid discourse that's gonna come out of this. There's gonna be a lot. If you thought 2020 was bad about the stupid like electoralism discourse, 2024 is about to get like pretty bad too. And I'm sorry, our lives are on the line. We cannot do this like electoralism bullshit. Thank you for subscribing. We can't. We cannot. Like, I know that electoralism isn't perfect. I know that we all have issues with it. But in this case, that is the sword that is being wielded, and it is the best one that we have to fight against it. Discourse to election boogaloo. True. Not looking forward to it, but anyway, point is, there is hope here. There are ways that we can proceed. There are things that we can do to prevent people like Trump, people like Matt Walsh from gaining power. And the other thing too, the other thing that I want to like hammer home before we like, end this. When I say hope, I am referring to the fact that popular opinion is on our side. And popular opinion doesn't mean everything, but is a good gauge for our like ability, right? We are able to influence popular opinion just through laws and through normalization. That's why normalization is such a big deal. Notice there's like a trend that you can notice whenever an issue is like hotly contested. The minute that it becomes normalized, it becomes really hard to reverse course because people become used to it. They start to see that they were wrong, or they start to just, like I said, be used to it. Think about like marijuana. Like years ago, like marijuana legalization, I remember being a hell of a lot more like of a debate than it is now. Why is that? Because once places started legalizing it, it started becoming normalized in a way that it wasn't before. That like normalization of like marijuana, like in terms of like societal structure by legalizing it, public opinion started getting a lot more in favor of it. The same thing happens in like every single other like political issue. When you start normalizing things, when things become legal, when it becomes normal to see, trans people every day in your workplace, at your church, in every like area, because trans people have always existed and always exist in these spaces. But when it becomes normal to see them, when we start to understand that they're just people like everyone else, when we allow like transition, it will cause public opinion to shift. And public opinion's already on our side. The majority of people are like in favor of stuff. It probably gets a little bit iffy with regards to like children in like some areas. But public opinion is on our side. The majority of people do want to protect the rights of trans people, which is why it is important to fight at the state and local level to ensure that there are protections in place. Because in if we are making sure that at the state and local level our rights are protected, people will start to become adjusted to that. They will start to expect it. And so then the idea of like any kind of like federal ban will seem like outrageous to them. I hope that like makes sense to you. But there is hope there. There is hope because like the fact that people are on our side means that it's incredibly easy for us to keep that momentum going. We just have to want it. We just have to do it. And that is hopeful. We already have the majority. We just need to keep it. But anyway, that's about all I've got on this. I've been debating coming out at work because of the effect it could have of humanizing trans people. I mean, that is a personal decision that you have to make. Like if it's safe for you, obviously, like that's a decision that you have to make. But that is yet another example of like ways that like normalization can occur. You know, being out at work. Like I am one of several like trans people at my job. Like where I work, it is like heavily normal. I work with like a lot of like non-binary people, and there's me and one other like binary trans woman. And I've worked with a couple of trans men too. Like, you have no idea how much better like of a culture it is when you normalize this kind of stuff. When like people feel comfortable being in those spaces, when you like expose people to like different, you know, types of people, they become like more receptive to them, and it makes it a more like comfortable environment for the marginalized group too. It kind of becomes like a symbiosis there. More people from marginalized groups will flock to those like spaces, to those communities, and also more of those communities will become open to those people. It's a recursive loop. And we can like accomplish that. Everyone is fucked over living under fascism. True. Cis women are on the chopping block too, later in the conservative timeline, but still in the targeted groups. That's the other thing that I'll briefly like say too before we cut this. Like, a lot of people are getting complacent too about like certain things. I have seen kind of like this concept where like, let's be real, a lot of like cis queer people seem to be complacent because like gay marriage was legalized, but they don't seem to realize that like that is hanging in the balance just as much as like everything else. And like trans people are just like the excuse. Like, we're just step one. It will be the rest of the queer community next. And then it will be women and racial minorities. Like that there is no like end state here. If abortion rights can be overturned, so can a Obergefell. Yes. Like that's the thing too. Like, wasn't it like in the like arguments and in the like dissent and stuff, like a Obergefell was even mentioned in those. Like, obviously like the overturning of Roe v. Wade didn't affect it, but like it was mentioned. It's on their mind. Clarence Thomas did. Yeah. It's on their mind. Like they know that they can do it. But yeah, that's about all I've got with this. Like, I want to be clear. This sucks. Like, this is a terrifying thing to watch. But there is hope, and we just have to not be stupid about this. We have to work hard to ensure that like that Trump doesn't get back in office. We have to work hard to make sure there are more Democratic politicians that are being active in their support. Because we are about to become 2024's main characters, and that's going to suck for us, but we can get through it if we fight. That's all I've got to say. I will see you next time.